Okay, so in contrast, the free cash flow to equity holders looks at the equity only. So what we're going to do now is estimate the cash flow that's available to equity holders only, and then discount that using the cost of equity, not the corporate cost of capital. So here are this is from the forecast, this is from the pro formas. We've got the net income plus the depreciation less equity retentions. Equity retentions is the total retentions. Remember up here we had retentions of $1 million per year, the third line. Now we're going to say equity retentions is the total retentions times 0.6. What am I doing there? I am. Why am I doing that? Exactly. The capital structure is 40% debt, 60% equity. So that's assuming that whatever capital we're going to need over the next 5 years is going to be financed in that same proportion. So what we're doing here is taking the equity retentions we estimate are going to be $1 million a year in capital to keep the place going. 60% of that, or $600,000, will be financed by equity. $400,000 will be by debt. So the free cash flow to equity holders are those numbers there. The net income plus the depreciation minus the retentions that are going to be financed by equity. So then we can also use, again, the constant growth model to estimate the value of the clinic from years 6 on and forever. Only this time we're going to use the cost of equity versus the cost of corporate cost of capital, because all we're doing here is identifying the cash flows available to the equity holders only. So we use the cost of equity in the constant growth model in this circumstance. And again, if we do that again, we get a residual value of $20.8 million. So putting it all together, here again, here are the free cash flow to equity cash flows, the 0.9, 1.4, and so on. We've got a terminal value estimated of 20.8. Again, that's the terminal value of the equity only. We have those total cash flows. We discount those cash flows by the cost of equity capital, which is 16%. We get an estimate of $15.1 million. The 15.1 is the estimate of the equity value. We've already stripped out the debt. It's what's left after we do that. Okay, any questions about the free operating cash flow or the free cash flow to equity holders models? Amy?
Is the constant growth model how we get the total value or the value from year 6 on, like doing the flip?
Could you repeat that, please?
Is when we find the total value of year 6 going on into
yes.
perpetuity, essentially got the same thing?
That's what this is doing. We're saying 5 years from now, we'll face, the West Side Clinic will face forever growth of 4%, and it's $2.4 million in net income right now. It's going to grow at 4% per year. Our cost of equity capital is 16%, and the growth rate's 4%. Doing that, if those assumptions are correct, then we would pay $20.8 million for West Side Clinic 5 years from now. Is that transparent? Or did that confuse?
Yeah, but is that like the same interpretation of like the value of in perpetuity kind of its value?
No, it is what you would pay for West Side Clinic 5 years from today. In other words, any asset, whether you're talking West Side Clinic or whatever, any asset that's going to produce $2.4 million per year that you expect to grow for 4% per year forever, and your personal cost of equity capital is 16%, you would be willing to pay $20.8 million for that asset. So the terminal value is really what the value of the clinic would be 5 years from today. But we have to bring that back to today's dollars, which is why it's included in the bottom line, why it's included in that cash flow over there. It's part of the 23.2. We have to bring that back to today's dollars. Other questions about Robert.
With both these methods, you end up with an equity value. Beginning, when would you use either one? Why would you use one over the other?
So that's a great question that you'll be asked to answer next week. I will tell you that there is no science to business valuation. These are methods. You'll see this one got an estimate of 15.1 million. I can't remember what the last one was.
17.6.
Okay, it's 15.1, 17.6. So let's save that question for 1 minute till we've talked about market multiple, because I want to talk about them all at the same time. So let's just, before we go on to this, let's show you some real market multiples. So Levin and Associates is probably the largest, or one of the largest investment bankers firms that handle hospital acquisitions, and Irving Levin and Associates. And here they put together, so now I have to do is find it. These are real market multiples. This is the volume. You can see the volume of activity is high. The volume. Okay, so here are some examples. Eric's not here. I could talk about Austin, Texas. These are examples of actual mergers and acquisitions that happened in 2013. So these are market multiples. Price per unit, price per revenue, price per income. Well, so what does that mean? It takes the price of this hospital and divides it by the per unit, I believe, is bed. That could be wrong. Let's talk about revenue. It divides it by the revenue of the organization. So in other words, this hospital was required for 88 cents on the dollar of its revenue. So if it had $1 billion in revenue, it was acquired for $880 million. This is price per net income, which is essentially taking price, dividing it by its net income. So these are all market multiples. Essentially, all they're doing is taking the purchase price and dividing it by some metric. EBITDA, income, price, per bed, whatever else. There are all kinds of different ones, and in the case next week, there are 3 different ones as well. This is just a practical example of what I'm talking about when we talk about these multiples. So what we do in market multiples is find some proxy for value, such as revenues. And we then divide the price by that proxy to get a ratio. And you can see equity value to revenue is 0.8. For the hospital we just looked at, it was 0.88. So these numbers are fairly realistic. Equity value to EBITDA, this was 6. I think in the example we just looked at, it was 7 or 8 or something like that. So again, those numbers are not unrealistic at all. So for this particular clinic, we estimate their year 1 revenues are $22.5 million. If we use a proxy, if we use the 0.8 equity value to revenues limited, we simply take the 0.8 and multiply it by the 22.5 estimated revenue to get an equity value of $18 million. That's all they're doing when the use of market multiples. We're looking around at similar sales that have happened in the market. We're calculating the ratio, and then we're applying that ratio to our own data, our own revenue, our own net income, our own number of beds. The EBITDA from the pro forma, when we add it up, is 2.5. And so in this case, the EBITDA would be multiplied by the market multiple of 6, and that would give us an estimate of $15 million. So we've got 4 different estimates, but all ranging between 15 and 18 million bucks, which really in the real world is very certain. In the real world, the range would be much higher. It could be anything. For example, like the Duke LifePoint one, it could have been everything from 350 to 550 million bucks, depending on what assumption you use. The consultancy, investment bankers, Irving Levin and Associates that handle these kinds of things have got very sophisticated financial planning models that they will use that are basically the free operating cash flow method or the free cash flow to equity holders method. And they're just a lot more complicated. So, both these methods have got problems and strengths. Discount cash flow forecasts, we often have, you have to rely on the estimate of the growth rates. There's a lot of uncertainty in the parameters that go into it. The market multiple method is perhaps based on more recent data, but you have to really wonder about whether the multiple we're using for our organization, it's based on multiples based on data from other organizations. Are those organizations similar to ours? Are they in the same geographic area? Does it use the same, is the real estate the same value? There's just a lot of judgment that's required to say this multiple is reliable or is not reliable. I don't know if that got your question or not for now. Cash flow forecasts are exceptionally difficult. I mean, everybody likes to think that these synergies will increase revenues and lower costs. Those, in practice, those things are often difficult to achieve. If you're in a for-profit setting, tax rates may change. By acquiring this organization, your marginal tax rate changes. There may be portfolio effects as well. If the valuation were for acquisitions, would all suitors obtain the same value? No, because different organizations all may be circling around your medical group practice or your hospital, but if I go with Duke, I may have higher synergies than if I go with UNC, or if I go with UNC, I may have lower synergies than if I go with Wake Med. So different acquirers may have different synergies with the target. What acquirer should win a bidding war? Optimally. Robbie.
The one that creates the most synergies with the target.
Yeah, the one that results in the greatest increase in value to the community in the not-for-profit sense, or in the share value in the for-profit sense. And that will happen through the maximization of synergies. There are lots of problems with small businesses. I'm not going to go through those. Cost of equity rates. Again, there are some very small companies, and it's difficult to estimate for the reasons we talked about before when we talked about the cost of capital. There's liquidity premiums, size premiums, depending on small hospitals, for example, are much riskier acquisitions in some ways because of the variability of cash flows. Let's talk about, for example, this is a for-profit setting, but it kind of gets to the principles of acquisition as well. We've got Westside, which is the target clinic. Let's just assume it has 1 million shares outstanding. It's trading at $12 per share. However, Eastside, we've targeted Westside. We want to acquire it. We've done our financial analysis, and we think it's actually worth $16 per share. So we're going to go after Eastside because we think it's undervalued in the marketplace. So what does that mean? Well, the Eastside is currently selling for $12 million. We think it's worth $16 million. So there's a $4 million premium here. In other words, if we acquire it, if we could acquire it for $12 million, then we estimate the value of both firms would go up by $4 million. So, but there's 12 million, sorry, there's the share is trading for 12. We think it's worth 16. So now we come to what does it actually trade at? And that's where we get involved in a dance. And the dance is between the acquirer and the target. So what does this table show you? That if the share price is actually sold at 12, if Westside acquires Eastside for $12 a share, which is what it's currently trading at, who wins? The acquirer gains all of the merger premium, $4. The target, Westside, gets nothing. essentially it's getting what the current that market value of the clinic says it's worth, $12. That's what we're going to give you. But if Eastside gets it for $12 and it really is worth $16, then all the benefit of the merger goes to the acquirer, Eastside. What happens if it sells for $17 a share? Sorry? Westside wins and the acquirer actually loses money because they're paying $1 more per share than what it's worth. So the target makes out like a bandit, and the acquirer loses money because they're paying more than what it's actually worth. So again, you can see this in this nice little graph. If the price is $16 per share, you can see the Eastside, the acquirer, gets nothing, and the target gets the $4 per share. On the other hand, if it sells for $12 per share, the target gets nothing, but the acquirer gets the $4 per share. So in the real world, we will end up somewhere in here, somewhere between the 12 and the 16 bucks. So, points about the graph, there's no magic about where you're going to be. The actual price would be determined by bargaining. What does that mean? Why might a target be in a good bargaining position? Why might it not be?
A target might be in a good bargaining position if their operations and their management are pretty strong, but they might be in a bad position if they're really on the verge of closing their doors and they don't necessarily have management with experience.
Okay, that's one reason. Amy.
Could a target be in a better position if if their acquirer has less information or knowledge about the industry or something?
Yeah, there could be asymmetric information. What happens if there's there's one target and a lot of acquirers? What will happen in a free market? Yeah, there'll be some bidding. It could be some bidding wars. So it depends on the relative strength of how attractive the target is to the acquirers, for all the reasons that have been stated. The acquirer, in fact, may anticipate that there are other organizations out there that might be interested in this target, so they may make a preemptive bid, which is just take it. We're going to pay high right away because we want this target, and we'll just preempt any other bids.